Every step you've taken from that cell, I'll make you regret. You listen to me, and you listen good. You'll never escape.
Hello ladies and gentlemen and everyone beyond, I am BabyNoobCakes and this is Twitch Prime Free Game Reviews. And in this episode, we're going to be taking a look at one of the March 2020 free games, Furi. To start off, I want to give a bit of a disclaimer. Most of the footage you're seeing is from my PlayStation 4 copy of this game, because Furi pretty much requires a controller, and I don't really have a good one for my PC right now. And Furi was a free game on the PS4's PlayStation Plus as well, back in July of 2016. The game even starts off by telling you that a controller is recommended, and it isn't kidding. I did mess around a little bit to find out if it was possible to play this game with a mouse and keyboard. And technically it is. It just feels like Dark Souls 1 original mouse and keyboard support on PC. Rough. But now, free yourself from your prison. Grab your lightning sword and prepare to get good. Let's attempt to answer the question, as one of the free games of the month, was it worth it? Mechanics. Furi is an action sword fighting game with some elements of bullet hell thrown in. It is stylized as a boss rush with no minor enemies or other side missions. It's kinda like if Sekiro Shadows Die Twice and Nier Automata had a baby and slapped on some neon lights and sent it back to the future scene of the 1980s. But since this came out before either of those games, maybe Furi spawned them? Anyway, you play a nameless swordsman who's freed from his prison cell, and your only way out is to defeat the 9 jailers, the bosses of the game, who stand between you and the prison's exit. To escape, you must first get good, and I am serious about that. This game is hard, really hard. The difficulty curve in learning this game is quite high for most players. Yes, I know you're out there somewhere, person who beat this game all the way through on your first try. I know you exist, but for the rest of us, this game is quite a challenge. At the most basic level, you have 3 health bars, and your opponent has some amount of health bars too. Different bosses have different amounts. Anytime one of you loses a health bar, the other combatant gains one of theirs back. Each time you lose a health bar, the current round restarts. But every time an enemy loses a health bar, or you enter close range combat with them, they will switch up their patterns of attack, and of course, they will always become more deadly as the fight goes on. The fighting is split into 2 parts, close range combat that I mentioned before, and long range combat. You usually start out at long range, where you need to be defensive with dodging ranged attacks and watching to block any melee attacks that come your way, but you will also need to be on the offensive, shooting your gun, slashing with your sword, balancing charged attacks versus quick hits. Your enemies will be relentless with their assault, but just because you get their health bar near the end doesn't mean you've won the round. At that point, they will sometimes fall, and you can engage them in close range combat. You still need to manage everything just as before, but now you've lost the use of your gun, and you are restricted to staying within just a few feet of your enemy. Timing your blocks is now going to be even more important as you try to tear through the last bit of their health bar. Furi can definitely sound like a pretty simple game overall, but mastering all of these techniques and timing them properly is the only way out of the prison you find yourself in. Art style. Oh my god, this game looks so cool! Sporting a semi-realistic, semi-cel-shaded style, with flashing lights and particle effects out the wazoo. Few other games match the unique visuals of Furi. It evokes a magical, futuristic, almost cyberpunk style. It shows off breakneck speed while fighting and combines it all with bizarre, sweeping, gravity-defying vistas. Between each boss, there are these cutscenes. Well, actually, they are forced walking sections, but there's an auto walk button and it will make it look cool and cinematic all on its own. And they really are the perfect moment to have to yourself and recover your composure from your last victory and prepare for your next battle. Also on display are bullets. Lots and lots and lots of bullets. And because the attacks you need to dodge are all unique, you almost never have a problem identifying and reacting to what is being thrown at you. Well, you might, because there can be an overwhelming amount of attacks happening simultaneously. But what I'm trying to say is that each attack is designed so that by the color, the texture, the overall look of each attack defines what type of evasive maneuvers or countermeasure you should be using. Sound. The sound design in this game is amazing. The soundtrack is filled with electronic pieces that all evoke a sort of cyberpunk future feeling. And this is actually one of those games where I have looked up the soundtrack and just will listen to it on repeat. It's that good. And the sound effects in the game are all extremely satisfying. You always know when your abilities are charged up, and all of your sword swings crackle with electricity and ring with the sound of steel. In fact, your enemies' melee attacks all have a sound cue that goes with them, along with a visual effect, and I always found it easier to actually listen for attacks rather than watching for them. Replayability. Okay, so normally, I use a website called howlongtobeat.com to find out the average playtime submitted by people who have beat games in order to compare to my own playtime and give you a good idea of how long it takes to beat all of these free games. This is the first time, however, that I disagree with the times on the website. They have reported that this game, Furi, takes between 6 to 7.5 hours to complete, and I think that the range of those numbers should be much higher. This is very much a trial and error game, and there is nothing else except for the bosses, so there's no way to progress other than to beat the current roadblock you're on. I've started up this game multiple times at this point, and put in quite a few hours here and there, starting the game, getting to a roadblock, quitting, and then restarting again a few weeks or months or years later. I guess what I'm saying is, don't expect to finish this game in just one sitting. But as far as playing this game once again, once you've beaten it, there are actually 3 different difficulty levels. Promenade, which is the super easy difficulty, and you don't actually even get to finish the full game with this mode. Furi, the standard difficulty, and once you've beaten that, you unlock Furier, which I'll admit I've never even seen myself, so I can't really comment on it. This game can offer up a lot of challenge if you're up to it. And, I'll say it again, if you can get good. Narrative. The story of Furi is a bit sparse, but you find out very early on that you are in prison, the most powerful prison ever created, floating on chunks of earth that have been suspended above a planet, and there are 9 jailers blocking your path back to the planet. The story of what happened is told mainly by your companion, another nameless man who follows you around, while floating, teleporting all over the place. Oh, and did I mention he wears a bunny mask and carries around a microphone on a stand? Yes, he is very strange, and stranger still is his record of what happened to you. Between each boss fight, you are greeted by his voice, and he will eventually reveal more and more about your past, and possibly a few details about the next boss in line. However, the story he tells seems to be mostly in cryptic riddles and on the very edge of believability. You can never be sure if he is lying to you or is maybe just crazy. But the only way to find out is to progress ever downwards towards your escape. Even though you get fragments of information from your companion, and also a bit from the bosses you face, you will wind up with more questions than answers. All the while, the mystery remains of why you were in prison. Who made this place? Who is your rabbit-faced companion? And even who you are. My opinion. I'm so happy I was finally able to talk about this game, because for so long, it had been my favorite game that I had never beaten. Until now, I did get through it this time. It was super hard, but I made it. This game really does ask you to get good, and I've kept coming back, and I always end up hitting my skill ceiling and not being able to finish it all the way. But no matter how many times it beat me down, I wanted to keep playing, to be able to prove that I could be good enough to beat it, and the overall aesthetics of the game kept me attached all the more. Like I've said, I've pulled up this soundtrack just to listen to it, and discovered some new artists in the process. And Furi just has this cool factor to it. It has a silent protagonist, a goofy sidekick, action scenes, synthwave music. So wait a minute. Is this a cheesy 80s movie? Maybe. Anyway, revisiting this game now for about the 4th time, I was finally able to beat it on the normal difficulty. I haven't even begun to attempt the Furier difficulty yet. Forget that. Was it worth it? Even though I had so much headache and heartache over this game, I had a blast. I know not everyone likes the challenge of a Dark Souls level difficulty game, but I know that the fanbase for that style of game is always rising. And if maybe you don't have 40 to 60 hours to put into a huge epic game from Software and deal with all the upgrading and character building and just want to get into a game that's tough as nails but no nonsense, Furi might just be for you. One of the things that I've forgotten to mention in my past 3 reviews for Twitch Prime games is talking about what kind of hardware you'll need to play them, since they are on PC. I can't believe I overlooked this. Anyway, here on screen are the minimum requirements to play Furi, which are some of the highest for this month's games. The graphics card is probably the biggest necessity on this one, but the required one here came out in 2012-ish, so as long as you have a dedicated graphics card, you should be fine. So most anyone with a gaming PC will be fine running this one. So even though this might not be the most accessible game, and it might not be everyone's cup of tea, I still have to say this game is so worth it. It's so polished, it's so brutally fair, and it just begs you to try and get good enough to beat it. But maybe that's for you to decide. Whether you agree or disagree with my judgment, get at me in the comments. Let me know what you think, and let's discuss if this month's Twitch Prime free games were worth it or not. Also, don't forget to go onto the Twitch app and download your free games every month, because hey, they're free, and sometimes you will find a few gems. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you later.